Most times you see a woman, she'll come for a pitch and she'll say, yes, my company is doing okay. Yes, I think we will make it. A man will come and say, we're the best. We're doing this, and they're so proud. And they'll just sign the check and give the man.
So women should brag a little bit.
Women should brag.
Put yourself out there.
Women, you need to put yourself out there. We need to help ourselves. And then society, we need more male allies, more he for she's. Because I always tell people, gender advocates, you can't just be doing everything woman. Your organization is a woman. It's just women. You come and stand, you protest women. No, it's not going to work. Sorry.
Interesting. Okay.
You need men.
Okay.
Because guess what? Men listen to men. They might not listen to you. But if they see a fellow man say, no, give this woman a chance. So we need male allies.
I'm Natasha Kimani. I'm a governance and public policy expert and the host of Talk to Me Direct podcast. In this series, I speak with 8 incredible thinkers in Africa, people working to solve complex challenges across the board. We discuss the civic space in Africa, the physical and online spaces where people come together to exercise their rights in shaping our societies. The civic space is important because it provides everyone with an opportunity to contribute to a thriving, inclusive society. Join us for these diverse topics, from ensuring technology positively serves society to ensuring that communities come together to increase women and youth's participation in decision-making. What should be done to bring more young people into decision-making spaces? Chinenye Uwanaka is a lawyer and a self-described nation builder and is part of an important fund that supports youth engagement in society. She supports work done to bring more young people into civic spaces. I've been wondering, what does your name mean?
Chinenye means God gives.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So I'm a gift from God.
That's incredible. Chinenye, you describe yourself as a nation builder. I find that very powerful. What does that mean? And why do you describe yourself that way?
You know what they say, right? So there are 2 very important days in your life. The day you're born and the day you discover why you are born. And from a young age, I was very inquisitive, why am I here? Why am I on this earth? And I always used to go to seminars and in school, talk to counselors, what do I do with my life? And on that journey to self-discovery, I then realized that the thing that makes me tick, the reason why I'm, happy to get up in the morning is when I have the opportunity to make impact. And as a nation, being from a country like Nigeria, blessed with amazing human resources, natural resources, but still not being able to hit those development metrics, I just have this desire every day to say, why can't we be like other nations that have developed? And then I realized that, these nations were built by people. If you look at the US, if you look at China, look at the stories of the Fords, the JP Morgans, even the founders of Luminate. These are people who have developed themselves, have built people, have built institutions. And so I discovered my calling. My calling is to make a difference. I'm a woman born in this country, able to have a good education, well-traveled. It comes with a responsibility. I can't just sit down and see things, go down the drain in certain sectors. And so my voice matters, my contribution matters. And I always say we're all leaders in our own spheres of influence. So I see myself as a nation builder. And I think over the past 10, 15 years, I've spent my life just sacrificing, my time, my resources, my talents to make my country and the continent a better place.
Please tell us about the Nigeria Youth Futures Fund.
Amazing. It's a one-of-a-kind fund. It's a very timely fund. It's a fund that seeks to empower, voices that prior to now haven't really been heard, and not just empower them, but give them the resource. We've really democratized, grant making and philanthropy and, some of the organizations we've been able to fund. Some of them have not received any funding before. They're first timers. And some of them, are actually individual grants, meaning that they don't even have a fancy nonprofit setup. These are just people doing amazing things in the grassroots.
Maybe we could just circle back a bit.
Okay.
Why was it created? Okay. What need was it trying to meet?
Yeah. So, all over the world, there's been this clamor. I mean, there was Black Lives Matter, in Nigeria, there was the NSAS movement. And there's just been this clamor for good governance, for youth representation, for empowerment. People were just tired of the status quo. And, we wanted to support, or let me say, not we, because I'm the co-chair of the fund, of the board of the fund now, but prior to, obviously, was Ford Foundation, MacArthur Foundation, and Luminate, that joined and said, okay, let's provide funding. Let's provide this innovative fund to give funding to organizations and individuals who prior to now wouldn't have had a chance. So it was supposed to increase access, and it was also supposed to, support organizations that are doing work in the civic space, or also organizations that are innovative, that empower young people, and that bring, young people together. So we have something called even the Catalytic Fund, where other organizations that are a bit bigger can actually support the growing organizations, help them with capacity building, So the fund is there to really build the capacity of young people, the next generation of leaders, and also give them the funding, the resources to be able to amplify their work, amplify their message. So it's been an amazing journey so far. It's been about 2.5 years that the fund has been running. Every day we learn and we adapt, and we try to make it better every day.
You mentioned that you create opportunities for policy dialogue. How often does that happen, and what changes have you seen when you've brought policymakers on one hand and young people on the other?
So, like I said, it's still a new fund. But so far, like last year when we unveiled the grantees, we had the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, we had the Minister of Youth, and we had other high-level government officials. Also, we have this report that we launched, which is called the Nigeria We Want report, and that was done by bringing together young people from across the country. And we had several sessions where they really expressed their views on the Nigeria we want. And then that report has been shared with a lot of policymakers. We're using it as a basis for advocacy, and so we want to continue to, increase that dialogue. And even just from my past experience, like I said, this fund is new, but in my personal capacity, I'm the co-founder of Africa Policy Conversations. And, over the years, really bringing together policymakers and young people. Sometimes policymakers are a bit afraid sometimes to engage. They don't know what's going to come out of it.
Why do you think they're afraid? What are they afraid of?
Well, accountability. A lot of people are afraid, because they feel like young people are very boisterous, opinionated, and sometimes they're afraid of being held accountable to maybe some of the promises that were made during the campaigns, things that were in the manifestos and all that. But what we've tried to do is to make them understand that, look, this is not a riot. This is not, we're not coming here to bash you. We want to work with you, want to collaborate with you. And that's why, when I say this term nation builder, is because we see ourselves as leaders as well. We see ourselves as responsible for the change that we want to see. So it's more of, okay, how do we collaborate? How do we co-create? We've had positive changes, and the advocacy, all these things we're doing, these organizations we're supporting, it's moving the needle. Obviously we're not where we need to be, but we've come a long way.
Africa is predominantly made up of young citizens. It's a young population. What does that mean for the continent's development, in your opinion?
For me, it means Africa is the future. There's no other continent that has, the youth population. The median age is 19. So most other continents are getting older. We have the workforce. It means that we also have the innovative ideas. It means that, a lot of the discovery and a lot of the, the future businesses, the future tech companies are going to be in Africa. We're already supplying the world with talent. Every country you go to now, they're looking for talent from Africa, And so I believe that, Africa is the future. When they say Africa rising, I know it's taking a while, but by all means, we have the landmass, arable land, we have the natural resources. And, now I'm so happy that young people are rising up, because prior to now, it seemed like, we were kind of waiting for things to be handed to us, but I see like that, that exuberance. I see that, that call to serve. We talked about the youth minister, and we talked about the minister of innovation and digital economy. People are coming home and saying, you know what, I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to serve. So I really believe that there's hope for the continent. I know some people might think it's bleak, but I believe there's hope. I mean, look at the creative industry, which is youth dominated. For instance, in Nigeria, we have it, employing thousands and millions of people. Nollywood, the music all over the world. We're exporting, not just, before it was just our labor, but now it's our intellect, now it's our creativity, now it's our fashion, so I just believe that, and some of these things are things that even technology cannot take away. So AI is not going to sing a song to me, or you know what I mean? It's not going to entertain me.
Burna Boy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I just think that, it's amazing to be a young person because there's so much you can do, with your talent and with your skills.
How can we then ensure? Because there are many young people who are like, well, I want to be this young person who's thriving on the continent. But every time I try to engage with policymakers, get on the decision-making table, I'm rejected. How can we ensure that there's more representation of young voices?
So like I say to people, you cannot do it alone. And sometimes young people, I think it's just that youthful exuberance. There's something called premature load bearing, and it's a term I learned while I was at the Kennedy School studying implementing public policy. A lot of times why people fail at doing things is that they tackle the problem head on. They just carry everything. They don't deconstruct the problem. You need to break down a problem into smaller problems, the root causes, and then find entry points. Right? So as young people, if you see a government, don't just say, oh, I'm going to come out. Chances are, you're going to come out, one person, protest, you get tired. If you're not in the right country, you might get shot at, and that's the end. Sorry to say. That kind of thing. So that's the emotional intelligence, the wisdom is so important. And in Africa, I think we just need to, it's not going to be handed to us. You need to also pay the price. You need to get involved, go to your grassroots, start building those movements from the grassroots. You need track record, because sometimes people also want tokenism, and tokenism is wrong. You don't want someone to just hand something to you because you're a young person. No. Are you a qualified young? Because we've seen disasters.
Being young is not enough.
It's not enough.
Chinenye, talk to me direct. You've spoken about young people getting engaged. But there are people who are asking, how do I begin? Where do I start? We can speak about the grand things that young people can do, but what's the one basic entry point for a young person?
That's a very good question. And I say that because a lot of people find it hard to get a foot in the door. Maybe they don't have the right pedigree, right education, exposure. I mean, I was talking to someone recently, and he's from a very big development bank, and they said there's a fund for the youth, and they came to Nigeria to launch it, and I was so excited. But I asked them, I said, please, I hope this fund will be inclusive. I hope that the people who didn't go to Harvard, the people who don't talk with British accents would have access to this fund. People who can put together very fancy business plans. And, he said, okay, we're still looking at, the concept for Nigeria and all that stuff. But yes, we'll take on some of the advice, And I kept going on and on and on because, funny enough, I've also been a victim of marginalization, be it because of gender or because of people not really taking you seriously. And I don't have all the capital in the world. It will amaze you that a lot of the work we do, especially the philanthropic work and the work we do with the non-profits, is actually self-funded. So we don't have access to huge portfolios of, funding and all that stuff. And so it can be very, very difficult. Honestly, it can actually be crippling for a young person. I always tell young people, don't feel like you cannot do it. There's always something you have. It can be, the way you write articles and people are like, wow, who's this person? So start with what you have. Start where you are. It's okay to start small. You don't despise the days of humble beginnings, But with persistency, with perseverance, you get to your destination.
I really like what you said about the fact that there are a lot of young people who may not have gone to good universities. So even as we focus on young people, we must ensure that the most marginalized are also represented.
Absolutely.
I think that's incredible. But you've spoken about technology and increasing access. Thereby, tech is a great enabler to development. However, there are a lot of young people who face barriers, such as affordability, internet shutdowns, and poor data laws and policies. How can we change this to ensure that young people have more access? So they don't have to struggle, for example, if they want to be musicians, they can record a TikTok easily and, they're off. How do we ensure that we increase technology
To be
access?
very honest with you, this is something that government has to do. I mean, the young people can only do so much. It needs the right policy. It needs the right policy direction and vision. Countries in Asia, the Asian tigers, have gotten it right when it comes to the area of innovation. From a young age, they have young people coding and learning how to build mobile phones. In Africa, sometimes I always say we outsource our thinking. We don't think for the future. We don't even think for the now. There's nothing that stops us. We have the brains. We have the intellect. We have everything. There's nothing that stops our governments from creating a policy that says that by the age of 10, every young person should have access to an affordable phone. Because, the affordability of the phones is what increases the access as well. So most times if phones are imported and you're paying, for FX and stuff, it's going to be expensive. So why don't we have more countries? I think Kenya did it recently where they set up a cell phone manufacturing, plant in, I think it was Kenya or Rwanda. I'm not sure, but it's one of those East, African countries. This technology is an enabler. And, Africa, we've missed out. A lot of countries missed out on the first industrial revolution, the second, the third. Now is the fourth industrial revolution where you have technology. And we don't want to miss out on that as a continent.
What role do you think young people can play in AI conversations and discussions, AI technology? What space do we have to create policies and decisions that shape our future?
So young people need to, take the plunge. So in the sense that, right, if you're waiting for these people, most people we have in government are older, risk averse to change. And sometimes it's like gibberish. When you say AI, blockchain, crypto, they're like, we don't understand it, let's ban it.
I also don't understand crypto.
No, there's some aspects I also don't understand. But my point is that sometimes people are always like, if we don't understand something, let's just ban it. And I'm not saying that you should just allow everything, right? You need cautious optimism when it comes to things like that. So what can young people do? Young people can try to use their voices, like Africa policy conversations, for instance. We try to bring these people and teach them. We literally force it down their throats. So if you have the knowledge and you see how it can be used, AI for civic, for education, AI for, like what the minister is doing.
Speaking of the minister, Nigeria's Minister for Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy is young. Fairly young compared to other leaders. Do you think that has made a change and difference in the policy-making space in Nigeria? Has it inspired many more younger people to get engaged in politics and policy-making?
Yeah, I think that his story is inspirational because people have seen that someone from the private sector can transcend, to the public space. So obviously, when he was announced as minister, the sector, the country, young people were very, very inspired that, they could also be leaders. He has brought a lot of passion, a lot of dynamism. He has a good team. We're rooting for him. We know that these are very complex problems and they won't be solved overnight. So I'll just encourage him to keep doing what he's doing, keep engaging. The thing about this thing is, it's you have to keep learning and adapting. You can't just assume that you know everything. You know what I mean? But keep listening to the end users. I think that's where our government really gets it wrong. Our policies are not user-centric, and we're not getting enough data from the everyday people.
Have you witnessed or seen how technology has increased public participation and enhanced democracy in Nigeria and other parts of Africa?
Absolutely. Technology is such an enabler because, one, technology empowers. Technology creates wealth. I have this theory that you cannot solve poverty using aid. You can only solve poverty by creating wealth. Technology has created a lot of young, rich people. And with civic participation, right, and democracy, people have more power to vote the right people if they have money. In Nigeria, there's something called vote buying. I don't know if you guys have it in Kenya.
No comment.
But in Nigeria, some of these elections, they go to the places where people are poor and they use money and they coerce them and they vote. So most times people might vote someone who they know is wrong because they're hungry. They call it stomach infrastructure. So guess what?
I must use that. Stomach infrastructure.
Stomach infrastructure, yeah. So,
Yeah.
you're talking about building bridges and roads. They're like, no, our stomach, we're hungry, So the point is, when people have financial autonomy, when they're financially empowered, they can make the right decisions. They can hold their leaders accountable. And so that's what technology has done. You have unicorns from Africa. You have young people in their 20s and 30s becoming billionaires because of technology. The NSAS movement, up until it became violent, before that, it was one of the first times I've ever seen in my lifetime people from different tribes coming together despite, their differences for one united cause. And that was all because of technology. People mobilized on Twitter, people, Zoom, people from the diaspora, people sent money using crypto. That's one of the reasons why, some of the people in government did not like it. But you know what I mean? So technology can be a tool for change, for empowerment and so on.
Have you seen any partnerships that have worked like that, where some of your former grantees or people within your community have come together and that collaboration has transformed their work or themselves as individuals?
Of course, every day. In fact, we as NYFF, we collaborate even with our grantees. Recently, we had an intergenerational dialogue where we had the former president of Nigeria, President Olusegun Obasanjo, with the Bridge Fellows. Those are our grantees as well. We've had Lecta. Oh, that was beautiful. I got to, I did the closing remarks of the event, and it was so he's such a great leader that I admire. He's one he really showed visionary leadership in Nigeria and on the continent as well. He's still very strong. He's still very passionate. And he gave us a charge before he left. He said, young people, he called it, I think he said positive deviance. No, something like a positive rebellion or something like that. So, but basically he felt like we needed to take charge of our nation. And I felt personally that mantle of leadership was passed on. It was a very spiritual experience for me. I felt like, this is someone from the older generation telling us everything that they survived. There's a problem we have in the civic space as well. People like to work in silos, and sometimes there's a scarcity mentality. So because we're in Africa, sometimes we feel like resources are scarce. So everyone is trying to clamor to let me just do my work so I can shine and so I can get a grant. But that's not the right way to do it, because guess what? The people that you're trying to remove or fight or, these guys are so powerful. So you can't be doing it in, if you have a country that's 200 and something million people and a continent that's over 1 billion, few organizations, we need more. There's space for everyone. So I always try to encourage, even when I talk to a lot of these youth-led organizations, that look, let's come together.
There's space for everyone.
There's space for everyone.
And there's more ahead.
There's more, exactly.
I would be remiss if I didn't speak about young women on the continent, because oftentimes young women are more marginalized. What has your experience been as a young woman in Nigeria and in Africa trying to take up space? And do you think that young women are doing much better than they were in previous years?
So definitely young women are doing better. So the fact that I can even say that, I set up a law firm and is one of the fastest growing in the country, and also co-founded a non-profit, Africa Policy Conversations, and we're able to do work not just in Nigeria, but in South Africa, in Rwanda, in the US. I'm sure that 10 years ago, that would have been very difficult. So there is improvement. However, there's still so many hurdles, so many battles we have to face on a daily basis. There are a lot of times that I would have given up. Honestly, especially in the beginning, a lot of people look at me and say, oh, you're pretty. And I'm like, And they think that I get things easy on a platter of gold, but they don't know that it becomes a burden. Because when you're faced with the work, I told you about being excellent. You're working hard to be excellent, but then at the same time, people feel like you have to work twice. They feel like they need to take advantage of you or own you. And you will find it in very incredible spaces. Even this development space that everyone's supposed to be kumbaya, we're all doing good. People literally want to take advantage of you. They want to sexually abuse you because you're a woman. They objectify you. And even sometimes you work with people in government, policymakers, and you're trying to get them to you're talking to a senator or minister or something, and they're not paying attention to this very important work, and they're distracted. So you have to fight all those, and then also society, culture, limiting beliefs, even yourself. People who make you feel like, oh, if you're a woman, you cannot be out there, you cannot be speaking too loud, you need to be at home, you need to...
What are some of the things we can do to slowly begin changing people's attitudes and behaviors, especially around young women and leadership in Africa?
So I think this is one of the things we can do. We sitting here, I must thank you. Thank you to Luminate. Thank you to you guys for giving me space for my voice to count. That's the first thing you can do, because a lot of women are doing things, but they don't have any platform to air out the work that they're doing, right? That's one thing. And then women themselves, a lot of women, I'm sorry to say, the men are so good at bragging about their work. They're not afraid to tell you about their accomplishments. Women are the least funded in terms of organizations. Even when it comes to startups, tech companies, women are the least funded. Because most times you see a woman, she'll come for a pitch and she'll say, yes, my company is doing okay. Yes, I think we will make it. A man will come and say, we're the best. We are doing this, and they're so proud. And they'll just sign the check and give the man.
So women should brag a little bit.
Women should brag.
Put yourself out there.
Women, you need to put yourself out there. We need to help ourselves. And then society, we need more male allies, more he for she's. Because I always tell people, gender advocates, you can't just be doing everything woman. Your organization is a woman. It's just women. You come and stand, you protest women. No, it's not going to work. Sorry.
Interesting. Okay.
You need men.
Okay.
Because guess what? Men listen to men. They might not listen to you. But if they see a fellow man say, no, give this woman a chance. So we need male allies.
Is there politics in your future? I would vote for you.
Wow. Thank you for that vote of confidence. People ask me this question all the time. I always used to say no because I was afraid. And it's part of the limiting belief I talked about. But recently, like I told you, I met President Obasanjo, and some of the things he said, I was so blown away. So maybe, I'll just say maybe, because I know it's a tough terrain and they'll eat you alive. But, I think that as the space is shifting and as people want, because to be very honest with you, we need leaders with integrity and values. We need to shift away from this culture of corruption, and good people have kept quiet and stayed by the way for far too long. And I always say nature abhors a vacuum. So if you're complaining about the problem and you just sit down, we need to get involved. But I can't do it alone. So I need to co-opt you. So I have a question for you too. Would you join politics?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Amazing.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then if we have...
Let's do this.
Enough women. Because, in Nigeria, we have less than 3% women in leadership positions. And also the cost of
politics is ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And so it's a barrier entry point for many, many women and young men.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I love your voice, by the way. It's so powerful.
Thank
You're so eloquent.
Much. Thank you very much. I've been speaking to Chinenye Uwanaka, nation builder and change maker. And if I may add, a phenomenal woman.
Aww.
Thank you for being with us today on Talk to Me Direct.
You've been listening to Talk to Me Direct, a podcast that spotlights the civic space in Africa today. From our conversation today, I'm re-energized by the power of youth mobilizing for change in Africa. In the next episode, we delve into the wonderful world of storytelling, which is core in shifting narratives in the civic space in Africa, with the filmmaker Judy Kibinge. Follow and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.